But for now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Karthik Ananda Rao. Karthik has over 20 years of IT experience, having started his career as a network administrator at Zoho. And today he is the Chief Technical Evangelist for ManageEngine and heads the technical research and marketing team for the MENA region. Karthik, over to you.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'm hoping you are able to see my screen.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. In fact, the previous session on Nutanix and cloud was very engaging and interesting too. And my session is timed right after that. So my focus here is going to be on the security strategy for cloud IT management. The growing trends in IT add much to the woes of administrators in terms of security and management. Cloud IT management has already gained momentum, and organizations look to move towards cloud IT management to reduce unimperative IT costs and maintenance. A security loophole like a configuration mismatch or missing security patch or unapproved data access or excessive privileges to users can dearly cost you much on IT and your business. And in this session, I'm going to talk about ways to scale up security of your cloud IT management infrastructure. And these security tips are applicable to the future trends in IT as well. You could host your infrastructure in a public, private, or hybrid cloud, and you have chosen a service model for your business too. It could be infrastructure as service, platform as service, backend as service, or software as service. And cloud IT management may include more, but is not limited to help desk and service management, assets and CMDB, desktop and mobile device management, identity and access management, security and information, event management, network application server monitoring. You may choose a public, private, or a hybrid cloud to host any of these services for your IT. However, the major concern these days is to ensure security of your internal and external data. In the next few slides, I'm going to discuss the right security strategy to adopt for cloud IT management and future IT trends. So the first one that I'm going to start with is the endpoint security to proactively detect and defend against cyber threats. Why is vulnerability an area of grave concern to organizations? The major challenge of growing organizations these days is the increasing number of endpoints. With steep increase in endpoints, traditional antivirus, file scanning, and security solutions are no match to the security loopholes that these devices pose to the network. In a study conducted by ManageEngine, we found out that close to 37% of the respondents did not use any kind of endpoint protection solutions or were just in the process of evaluating potential security solutions. The same study had around 33% say that their biggest challenge with endpoint security solutions lay in its complexity of deploying, managing, and using these solutions. When it comes to vulnerability assessment, you have to scan your endpoints regularly to detect vulnerabilities and mitigate them immediately using patches or alternate fixes. Early identification of exploitable threats that require little or no user intervention. You have to put the vulnerabilities in context to understand their priority, urgency, and impact. You have to prioritize the response, such as patching or mitigation workarounds. You should also avoid hefty fines for not conforming to standards for security compliance standards and regulations like HIPAA, PCI DSS, and much more. And you also have to finally understand that patching might interfere with the ongoing operations of the business. And when it comes to security configuration management on workstations, it includes a whole bunch of activities like firewall audit, password policies, where you have a strong password policy and frequent password rotation, Microsoft Office security, the place where you have to store your documents securely, securing the remote desktop sharing functionalities, managing network shares, logout and logon security, where you implement a multi-factor or a two-factor authentication for logon activity, user account management, where you have to disable the default administrator login, guest login, or orphaned accounts, user account control, where you control on user activity, default path of the user account, and much more. So these are certain security aspects that you may have to look into when you have to move your IT management to the cloud. Enterprise patch management, this again can be moved to the cloud. You have to think of automating the patch management, use a single agent to distribute patches for all applications and software, have a single console for your hybrid infrastructure where you have Windows, Mac, and Linux operating systems. Ensure patching is done for both Microsoft and third-party applications. And you should have a flexible deployment policy, like after hours deployment or shutdown or restart policy after applying patches and so on and so forth. And ensure that all these patches have been applied to workstations only after proper testing and approval. When it comes to application control, you have to have a whitelist and blacklist of applications that are allowed or disallowed on workstations. Administrator access has to be removed on all applications and software. Just-in-time elevation of privileges is necessary so that you don't provide your users with complete access on all workstations. Have control over child processors of applications. And finally, provide application-specific privileged access to users and workstations. When it comes to endpoint privilege management, you have to adopt a zero trust security model and enforce role-based privileges to all users, and to all the whitelisted applications in your network, you can allow self-elevation of privileges so that users can do a self-installation of trusted applications and software, thereby reducing the number of help desk tickets. Remove all unnecessary local administrator accounts, which when left unnoticed can be a security loophole. On the device control, you have to control all the ports that are connected and all the devices which are connected to the devices. You may have to block unauthorized access to your data and monitor all device and file actions effectively. You have to set read-only permissions for critical files, and you can also limit file transfers by setting maximum file size and type of file. You can create an exclusive access for devices to access your computer by adding them to the trusted device list. Effectively secure files involved in data transfer operations by creating and storing mirror copies in password protected shares. You can also monitor the file actions in real time, record details such as file name, location, along with computers, devices, and users involved, and from where to which device it has been copied. File shadowing or data mirroring, as it can be called. How do you prevent data loss, or what are the benefits of having a file shadow policy? By reviewing the file, by reviewing the shared folder with copied data, the actual content of the stolen file can be identified. And this is the first step in a quick and cost-effective recovery. When a network failure caused by malware injection leads to corruption of original files, the business critical data, which has been frequently accessed by remote users, should be restored from file shadow remote share folder quite soon and effectively. Since you have all information about the file and endpoints, users and devices, and since these details are being documented, the impacted users can be warned to change their passwords and encrypt their intellectual property as and when you think there is a data breach or data leakage. You may also want to manage all your browsers from one console. You want to gain complete visibility of the browsers present in your network. Now, mandate the use of trusted or approved browsers in the network. You want to keep track of all the browser extensions and plugins and add-ons installed onto the devices. And you want to assign specific Java versions to web applications based on requirements. Control access to the internet by providing or denying access to specific sites. When it comes to mobile device management, security is at the top of the pyramid. So the corporate owned mobile devices, in case if it is lost or stolen, you want to remotely wipe off the data, either personal or corporate, or depending on the use case. You may also want to detect and report on high risk and non-compliant devices that do not conform to your organizational standards and policies. You may want to allow only enterprise apps to run on mobile devices so as to ensure optimal performance of these mobile devices. Separate the corporate apps from personal ones and ensure these corporate apps cannot be accessed using the 4G or 5G network so as to prevent data theft. You also want to keep the personal apps a step away from using your corporate network. Say you can disable, for example, you can disable Facebook or other social media websites to access the corporate network. ensure all these mobile devices are compliant with specific policies that you have defined for your organization, like the Wi-Fi password or the VPN or the background and things like that. When it comes to SIEM, you want to cut down on the log storage spending by ensuring security of log data collected from various devices. You want to audit security events and understand the event correlation and generate compliance requirements like PCI DSS, GDPR, or much more. Access and manage the log data from anywhere so as to understand your user entity behavior analytics. And you want to scale up your network architecture without worrying about the log volume. Finally, you may also want to include analytics into this data analytics into your cloud IT management. So you want to look in for a software or a cloud vendor which can provide you with augmented and predictive analytics of the data. You may have data from all verticals like service desk, network server application, availability and performance monitoring, user management, desktop configuration, patch management. You want to generate reports based on the data and share these reports to your peers and stakeholders so as to transfer data to information to knowledge to wisdom. And you also want to receive alerts when data breach happens or when a data breaches the threshold in the patterns that you identify. When it comes to privileged access management, you may also want to think in these lines as well, where you want to store your passwords in a centralized vault, secure remote access to IT resources as and when needed. Privileges can be escalated as and when it is needed. So you have to start with minimum privileges for all the technicians. Keep monitoring the activities of privileged users and ensure password and active session management is protected for your DevOps resources as well. Maintain the application and database passwords in the centralized vault and reiterate them frequently as you do for other IT resources too. UEBA, as I mentioned earlier, which is user entity behavior analytics. You want to record the user entity behavior through log collection from various sources like workstation servers, domain controllers, network resources. So you want to allow a grace time for the behavioral patterns to be identified and recorded and check for any deviation. It could be time, count, or a pattern anomaly. And any deviation in this pattern is associated with a risk factor, which will help you to identify incident threats or account compromise or data exploitation. And data security, that's going to be the last one before I actually touch upon the compliances. So you might have to first discover the data, identify the PII, personally identifiable information which is stored in files, folders, or shares. Audit the file servers, who access these files, when and how and why, and analyze the storage as well. Analyze and identify redundant, outdated, and trivial data to declutter your file servers and cut down on storage costs. When it comes to the compliance, you may want to follow the one which relates to your industry. So it could be PCI DSS for banks and financial institutions, GDPR, the widely used General Data Protection Regulation, and ISO 27001 for security standards, and much more. And now it's time for a discussion. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Karthik. Unfortunately, we're pretty pressed for time at the moment, but if you're sticking around, then please do ask Karthik any questions in the chat box. And I'm sure, are we able to share this presentation with the audience as well, Karthik?
Of course, you can.
Fantastic.